System already being rolled out in real time. It's already in place. The New World Order is here. They're just now incrementally putting it out. Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'Hashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'Hashem, Rakakadash. Double honors, the elders and apostles of Great Millstone, who are teachers of truth and sincerity. And shout out to Yakims out there in the four quarters of the earth proclaiming this truth. Braka the Yahweh, Braka the Yahweh Shai, Ba'Hashem, Rakakadash, Brakatum. So getting into this COVID 2.0, which is what you would call energy lockdowns, shutouts. You know, they're going to shut down the electric system, you know, especially over there in EU, which will eventually catch on to over here. But they're going to have energy lockdowns. This is something that President Ursula has talked about, and just continuing on from the previous video. Here it is.
It's worked out in China. You go to China, I'll show you around. We have AI surveillance. We have AI digital currency and digital ID, and it's worked out well in China. But the Chinese people are a different breed. The American people love freedom, they love liberty, and I think that Americans rather fight than surrender their liberty.
But
do you put any
it'll eventually make its way over here.
There's a lot of theories out there that COVID was a depopulation agenda because the international bankers and the WEF types, they realized that they can't sustain the aging populations, and so they did this vax, which has it's completely toxic, and it has negative efficacy, and they had to rig all the numbers in the systems. Like, for instance, if you died within 14 days of getting your vax, they considered you unvaccinated, even though there could be a correlation between you dying from the vax. So they had to do all that. So do you put any credence into that theory that there is this kind of, because it was a global phenomena, that it wasn't just the United States, it was everywhere, except for maybe Africa. So do you think that there's any credence to that idea that the people in control, really the handful of billionaires that run the world, really did want a depopulation agenda?
If that were their plan, I'd be very impressed. I don't think they're that smart, and I don't think they're that strategic. I think that COVID happened because the baby boomers are really afraid of germs, and that's why you have these global lockdowns, because the baby boomers insisted on everyone to stay at home. So the nation that best responded to COVID was Sweden, because the epidemiologists in Sweden said that you can't stop a virus; it's impossible. So we're not going to disrupt the economy, we're not going to disrupt schooling, but we will protect our vulnerable people, which includes people with
plus
diseases,
they already had the chip.
Population.
Which is basically the Barrington Declaration.
Basically. And it worked very well for Sweden. Their economy was not as impacted as the rest of the world. But having gone away with COVID, with the COVID lockdowns, we can expect that the elite will use the strategy again if the crisis were to emerge, right? So they're not strategic, but they're opportunistic. They don't think ahead, but they see the benefits of certain strategies. So if this war were to continue, we can imagine lockdowns because of the energy crisis.
Yeah, so that's what I'm thinking. So that's why they'll be able to, people have already talked about it, that there's going to be energy lockdowns and that they're going to have surveillance, and they're going to let you know how much energy you're allowed to use. And once you exceed that, they're going to cut you off. They're going to stop your car. They're going to stop all that kind of, and do you see that happening?
Yes, it's all part of the plan, right? The 10-day calls for a technocracy. What is technocracy? A government ruled by AI. That's why America's building all these data centers, even though they cost a lot of money. They don't really actually turn any profit, right? So if you're a company like OpenAI, like the more subscribers you have, the more money you lose, because it actually costs you more money to have subscribers than you can generate profit for them. But you have Operation Stargate in place, $500 billion to build data centers all across America. So why would they do that? And the answer is technocracy. The answer is you're moving towards an empire. You need to create an AI surveillance state, digital currency, digital ID, and it helps you do a national draft, helps you control the people, it helps you ration energy and food.
And so how do you see a way to turn this around, or is this already, this is in the cards because history dictates, and they've. Is there? I mean, could there be a charismatic leader who turns this around for the United? But they would just kill him, right?
Yeah. So I don't think this plan will work out because the empire is in decline. They're desperate, right? So they want a national draft. They want a AI control grid. This is all part of their plan. But the people in charge aren't that bright, and they're not that effective. And I think it's all going to blow up in their face because I think the American people are much more resilient, much more creative than they believe. It's worked out in China. You come to China, I'll show you around. We have AI surveillance. We have AI digital currency and digital ID, and it's worked out well in China. But the Chinese people are a different breed. The American people love freedom, they love liberty, and I think that Americans rather fight than surrender their liberty.
And so now I'm hearing you say another, like, so there is a chance that the American people, because we do value our freedom, although you couldn't tell, half the country certainly didn't during COVID. They were willing to accept
They complied.
every single
They took
restriction
the
on their
juicy
freedom,
juice.
including fascist Nazi-like impositions of forcing people to take experimental medical treatments. So you think that the answer to this lies in the mass of people coming together?
So yeah, the COVID lockdowns were bad in America, but they're nowhere near as bad as that in China or Canada, right? In Canada, there were the trucker protests. And these were just people who wanted a meeting with Justin Trudeau because they had questions about the vaccine mandate. And instead, they were debanked. If you actually gave $1 to the truckers, you also debanked. So Canada is far more authoritarian than the United States. In the United States, if you didn't like the vaccine mandate, you moved somewhere else. You moved to a red state that didn't have these vaccine mandates. You couldn't do that in China. You couldn't do that in Canada. You couldn't do that in Europe. So I think that America is really the best hope for the world. Unfortunately, the people in charge, even though they're not that strategic, even though they're not that smart, they are pretty evil. So we can imagine that they will promote false flag operations. They will promote civil wars in order to justify the use of a AI surveillance state.
And so you see our empire in decline. It might work for the next couple of years. And when you say Trump will get a third term, you mean they'll amend the Constitution to make that happen?
Right. So I actually don't know the legal technicalities here, but what I do understand is that there's actually nothing in the Constitution that prevents Trump from running as a vice president in 2028 and having his son, Don Jr., run at the top of the ticket. And then when they win in 2028 by rigging the election, then Don Jr. can just abdicate, and then Trump will be the president again for the next 8 years.
I never thought of that. Isn't that funny? I never thought that he would run as vice president. That seems so sinister. So you don't predict a collapse like by the end of the 2026 or 27 or even 28, but do you think that? So we're moving into a multipolar world then, right?
I mean, you can call it multipolar, but it's really a world in collapse. It's like a Bronze Age collapse where globalization breaks down, and you're going to have like famines all around the world. You're going to have wars. So the world right now, it's over-leveraged, but it's overextended. We've mortgaged the future in order to enjoy the present. An example is that right now the population of the Earth is about 8 billion people, but that's being supported by fertilizers, by oil, by medicine. So if the world were to deglobalize and deurbanize, then people would lack access to fertilizers and cheap energy. And this would mean that we would see a steep population decline over the next 10 years.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I've seen videos recently of, people from the Club of Rome talking about this decades ago, that we can only sustain maybe 1 or 2 billion people on this planet. And I just can't believe that, like this. So how come this stuff doesn't get taught in schools? How come people don't talk about this in colleges? How come it's taking Donald Trump to make
they don't really want you to have knowledge
come to the surface? Do you have any theory on that?
Well, I mean, public schools were created to brainwash you, to indoctrinate you. I know because I've worked in education reform for the past 20 years, so I know how screwed up the school system is. There's one word you're never allowed to say in education reform. I've been to a lot of education conferences around the world, and no one ever talks about the elephant in the room, which is the idea of meritocracy. Why is it that you have a hierarchy in the school system where if you're smart, you're allowed to go to a good school, if you're dumb, you're not allowed to go to school at all? And the reason is control. The reason is indoctrination. The people who graduate from the Ivy League, and I know because I went to Yale, are the biggest ass kissers in the world. They're not smarter than you. They're not better than you. They just happen to sit up to authority better than you. And that's just the nature of the school system that we have today.
Yep, bunch of ass kissers.
I've noticed the people, they came from Ivy League schools to Hollywood, and they excel quickly, and it's through ass kissing. They know exactly how to do it. They know exactly whose ass to kiss. And I've noticed it in my own little corner of Hollywood.
So Jimmy, if you sort of spend like a week at Yale going to classes, you'd be shocked by the level of education at Yale and Harvard. You'd be like, oh my God, these are the smartest people in the world. Oh my God, this is the level of elite education that we have today.
Of idiocracy.
I always claimed that, I was a C student. I was, because I wasn't interested in school at all. And, but yeah, when I meet these people, I'm not as impressed as I should be. That's for sure. And especially,
but you know what what I admire about you, Jimmy, is that even though you're a C student, you're still curious, you're open-minded, you appreciate debate, you ask good questions, and that's a secret to learning in life.
Hey, come see us doing live.
Yep, exactly. Questioning all things. Well, if you're like me, that's how you came to this truth to begin with, right? It's you began to question things. It's like, wait a minute, this doesn't make a sense. Okay, you telling me that he died for everyone, but if you don't call upon his name, JC, right, you're going to go to hell for all eternity and you're going to burn forever, is what you were taught. You know, you were indoctrinated with that bullshit, but you began to question that. It's like, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense. If he's all loving, all forgiving, then why would he do something like that for eternity? Not just for a day or two, but for all eternity, just because you fucked up. You know, it didn't make a lot of sense. So you began to question that. And you just kept on questioning things like, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense. That contradicts over here, you know, and you begin to question more and more. Eventually, you would figure out, wait a minute, these people over in that land, there is no way they could be the actual Jews of the Bible. You know, and you get to thinking more and more, it's like, well, wait a minute. The Bible speaks of how they get, how when they see Jerusalem compassed, which happened in 70 AD, that they would flee into the mountains. Well, you know, and you start putting it together, it's like, oh, these are the people that are every byword, you know, that they call niggers, spics, you know, gooks, whatever. Or not gooks, but, you know, called every byword. Yeah, even gooks is not even as bad as the way that they slur us, right? And you would figure out those are the real Jews of the Bible. They're the real Israelites, you know. And that's just it. We are not in our land. You know, Jerusalem was compassed in 70 AD. It doesn't fit the so-called Christian narrative. And that's how you came here. You know, I used to say, welcome to In Revelation times where we begin to question everything, you know, that we were taught. And that's how I eventually found Great Millstone, you know, because I found out who the real Israelites are, and I found Apostle Tahar, and I found a whole bunch of them. And I figured it out. That, yeah, who they, you know, ignorantly call niggers are actually the real Israelites. They're the real Jews of the Bible. You know, and like everything else, though, you know, I eventually would find out that I was an Israelite foreigner. I didn't look like, but I do happen to be of that seed. You know, that I'm an Israelite because I was, you know, this understanding ain't just given to just anyone, but there's an elect. And eventually I found my way, and that's how I came to this. So, you know, and there's going to be more stories like that, you know, because this word has gone out, and that's why things are accelerating. So it's time to get right with Yahweh Shai, you know, and you would learn the names too, if you've been following, you know. You would learn what the true names are, that, okay, the letter J was created in the 1500s, 1600s, it's not even that old, you know, so how could these be the ancient Israelites if the letter J, they wouldn't be using the letter J at all. That, okay, someone doesn't want you to know. Maybe because his identity, you know, happens to be the enemies of the Most High. Better known as the Edomite race. And you will learn more and more about that as you would come over to here. You know, because we're the ones that have the 100% truth. You know, and that's how I found it. War against Iran could lead to the worst global food crisis since the 70s. The U.S.-Israeli war against Iran is choking fertilizer supplies via the Strait blockade, threatening increased farmer losses and spikes in food prices as 20 to 30%. So it looks like Alex still has control over InfoWars, because this ain't Onion Wars yet, but eventually InfoWars, as you know, it's in bankruptcy, etc. So eventually this site, he'll have new ones, I'm sure. But nonetheless, though, this is what's going on, you know, leading to a worldwide crisis, you know, the energy crisis, better known as. And yeah, they could do the whole lockdown things, you know, especially starting in Europe, you know, with all the problems it's having. Though currently under a fragile extended ceasefire, the U.S.-Israeli war against Iran with respective blockades of the Strait, disrupting oil flows, another crisis looms that also threatens the world's dinner plates. And so that's another thing, is that they obviously expanded till now, till Sunday, right? So an extended 2 weeks, right? Recent analysis warns the current military campaign It is choking fertilizer supplies through the strait, potentially triggering the worst food crisis since the 1970s energy crisis. This ripple effect have been immediate, with fertilizer plants in India, Bangladesh, and Pakistan shutting down and slowing down their production due to the reliance on imported natural gas from the Gulf. Urea prices have naturally surged roughly 50%, ammonia by 20%, and diesel, essential for farm machinery and transport, by 60%. So it is inevitable that perhaps food prices will go up 20 to 30%. So there it is. You know, it's all being manufactured and done. So a little more from Alex here.
Her own racial agenda. That is the program operation that they're launching. He said the right thing, clearly, Bannon and his own advice. But Trump's smart as well. It was him earlier this year said all these attacks on Jewish centers and these hundreds and hundreds of bomb threats.
All right, that has nothing to do with anything. I thought he was talking about, what's going to happen to. But nonetheless, though, leading to a planned food collapse, as this video goes into. So here we are, alternative media, and talking about what their plans are.
Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media here, and everything that we've been talking about for so long is coming to fruition right now. The Great Reset agenda, the full scale of it, is being rolled out in real time, and we are living through a very historic period here as we see massive shortages. Wheat spread blows out as drought chaos plagues America's breadbasket. Of course, we've been talking about
with the drought hoaxes again.
News and the DHL CEO warning of a prolonged energy shock that could push the global economy to a tipping point. Well, it's a good thing that they're rolling out perfectly, by the way, in the same exact time as this, the same time frame, and this has been planned for years, the new system of UBI, digital IDs, social credits, etc. In fact, the Canadian government has already been rolling out social credit for quite some time, as has the UK, as has the European Union, and of course with the United States, with their 5-year social media history mandate to enter the country. And Mark Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada, has something interesting to say about this.
New jobs will be created, but old jobs will be lost. And the question is, what happens to the people in those jobs? Are they ready for the new jobs? How do you get them ready for the new jobs? And look, the lesson of previous industrial revolutions, and we are entering 2 industrial revolutions at the same time. This is
interesting, the digital system,
sustainable revolution and the AI revolution. The lesson of previous industrial revolutions is what happens is that you go through a long period with huge change of jobs and industries, and that workers are slow to benefit from the benefits of those new industries.
And we are going to go into further what he is saying here later on in the video, because it encapsulates exactly what Elon Musk is pushing at the same time as the exact same thing that the World Economic Forum is pushing. So no shock there. My friends, they are getting ready to force us into that ration-based system and give you ration-based foods, and it's up to you to reject, stand up, and get prepared today. So before we get into this, I urge people to get 25% off when you use code WAM, W-A-M, over at heavensharvest.com. This is just a no-brainer, my friends. For long-term storable foods that are non-GMO, there's organic kits, heirloom seeds, water filtration and storage, books on how to get started, freeze-dried food. Again, with code WAM, W-A-M, you'll get 25% off. So when you look at a big price here, first of all, larger serving sizes than most of these companies. It is, of course, good food. It is organic, much of it, if you go for the organic packs. Either way, it's all non-GMO, and it's something that you're already saving money on versus inflation today. But then you get another 25% off. We're doing everything we can to get people to actually jump on this so that they are prepared down the line. So that all comes down to you, my friends, and that is one of the major solutions to push back against this system which wants you eating that Bill Gates food in the future in ration lines. Don't allow yourself to be waiting and putting this off until this happens. Also, check out our new link in the description for Medicamentum Authentica Shilajit. So this is amazing stuff by Dr. Andrew Kaufman. When you use code WAM10, WAM10, you'll get 10% off. They try it. Second top agricultural exporting country in the world, in the Netherlands. They have been well on their way to getting to achieving this goal as they're pushing the net zero agenda everywhere else. As they're going after farmers in Ireland and in France and all these other places throughout the world, including the United States. Yes, even under the Republican governments, there are severe restrictions that continue to hurt farmers. And with these tariffs and with these shortages and with the fertilizer shortage that we're seeing from the Strait of Hormuz right now, across the board, we're seeing not only just prices skyrocketing, which will continue to happen, that is just basic economics 101, but we're seeing also the collapse of production, and also with the diesel shortages and everything, trucks lining up in many countries, mandates already put in effect in many countries, including Australia and elsewhere, where they have limits on how much you can actually get. Now, this is back and forth, and of course with the rhetoric, everything's okay. The market tries to correct itself in, I would say, extremely stupid way, because the correction of the market from going down to then up, because Trump says something, doesn't match the actual production, the actual shipments, the actual supply, which could cause an even bigger bubble, a bigger problem to explode. Of course, the United States has been in a recession since 2008. It's been papered over time. This idea that they're
Yep,
they're
the
going into a
paperweight.
recession is nonsense.
Kick
We already
can
are
down
in
the
one.
road.
But what we're seeing right now is, it's really important to understand, it's a manufactured crisis to force people into the new system. In fact, we have Mark Carney, which we'll go into further later, saying that Canada's creating a new world order with China with this $1 trillion trade deal. China was just caught trying to ship weapons, according to the U.S., to Iran, which again is just all part of the scripted move to cause this false flag narrative to shift power from the west to the east, which has been in the playbook since the 1970s, when Henry Kissinger met with Mao and created this alliance with China to prop them up as a guinea pig state for technocracy and prop them up for trade. Of course, the Trilateral Commission was a major part of that. That was one of their main goals, is to prop up China as that guinea pig state. And then the COVID stuff happens. The Sesame Credit came out around 2012 to 2014 in China. Now they're doing it everywhere else. It's just basic 101 technocracy.
Yep.
Create a problem, get a reaction, come in with a solution. The solution causes more problems. It's a Hegelian dialectic. Now, what we're seeing also with this crisis is a move towards just BRICS countries in general, with, of course, Russia benefiting greatly from the oil situation, despite the United States acting like they are restricting Russia. It's very combative what the U.S. is doing with Russia, and taking their tankers from Venezuela and then blaming it on Iran and saying, oh, the Hezbollah is in Iran, or is working with Iran in places like Margarita Island in Venezuela. They use this as a reason to then seize their oil. It's absolute nonsense. I've been talking to people from the island of Margarita in Venezuela. There are no Islamic people whatsoever there. It's such nonsense. The narrative is stupid. They're going after this stuff similarly in Mexico. They're going after it in Cuba. They're going after Colombia. They're going after Honduras. They're going after a lot of these countries right now, and we have to keep our eye on it, because this is part of the same agenda. So when we see the breadbasket go down on top of this, and then we see the bird flu thing come in, and they say, oh, look, we have to cut off, or we have to massacre all these chickens, and they don't get to the grocery shelves. We see the prices go up. We see the shortages. We see the issue with shipping. We see less people shipping things. We see the collapse of the supply chain in general, which is what they want, which is exactly why I put things like Heaven's Harvest in the description, but we won't go back to that right away. Again, hard red winter wheat futures widen to their largest premium over soft red wheat in more than 2 years, as severe drought intensifies across key breadbasket regions in the Great Plains and Midwest. This means traders are pricing in weather impact and tightening expectations for higher
rather than call it a dry season, they call it a drought.
This is absolutely insane.
Scare you.
Because this is, again, when they say breadbasket, I mean literally, this is a breadbasket. This is the base of all major foods in the country. It says it's important to note that HRW is a more valuable protein and primarily used in bread, rolls, and all-purpose flour. It is grown in the U.S. Plains, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, while SRW is used in cakes, cookies, crackers, and pastries, and is grown in the eastern U.S., Ohio Valley, Midwest, Southeast. And it says the blowout in the HRW-SRW spread, the biggest premium in 2 years, is mainly due to weather stress as drought grips the central U.S. market. The central U.S., the market is currently pricing in possible supply imbalances and quality concerns for HRW. So now, again, we see these similar issues all the time with these droughts, and now they're saying there's going to be massive heat in some regions and massive cold in some regions. And it's also convenient when you can actually manipulate the weather, which we've seen, which they have acknowledged that they do. And it's always so convenient when this is happening in the middle of a supply chain crisis. As of mid-April, 61% of the lower 48 is in drought as the northern hemisphere growing season begins and farmers start planting, according to NOAA. This equates to nearly 149 million people across the lower 48 affected by drought. About 45 states were experiencing moderate drought conditions as of last week. Now, again, this is all happening as the drought is complicating things for ranchers, as the nation's cattle herd is already at its lowest level since the 1950s. That's something I've reported on, something I did a speech on at Acapulco, which I'm actually wearing the shirt for, conveniently enough right now, where in my speech on stage I talked about this 53-year cattle head shortage. It's now 54 years, because we're going back to 1952 specifically, when there was about 1 billion people on planet Earth, versus now 8.5. Some people say that's a conservative estimate. It could be as high as 11 billion. Point is, then versus now, that's like an 8 to 11 times increase in the problem. So not only is it a record versus that time, we have a lot more people on Earth. So this is a massive shortage. And again, by design, they don't want you eating meat. They want you eating the fake stuff. Even though the fake stuff goes into bankruptcy all the time, no one wants to actually eat the fake stuff.
Fuck
the reality
no.
is, when it's mandated, it won't matter. And I'm going to go into that a little bit more later as well, because I do have some examples of how that is already the case, already ready to be forced on you. DHL CEO warns prolonged energy shock could push global economy to tipping point. I've done a lot of videos as of recently, well, lots on the supply chain, lots on the grid situation as well, because again, as Trump calls for the new war economy, we are seeing the effects, the likes of which we've never seen before on the grid. as we see the Iran war perpetuate. And again, I've done a lot of stuff on this recently, from the social credit to the CBDC launch through X Money, which is through XAI and then the Pentagon and all that kind of stuff, pushing for a complete control system over the currency. But of course, I've also done a lot on the grid. If my internet works enough to load another page here, there we go. Over on Rumble, I urge people to go follow us there. If you're watching on Band.video, by the way, that's about to go down, so please make sure to follow us on other platforms. Anyway, okay, so let me see here. I should have it immediately here, if I can find it. Well, okay, panic buying, we've seen a lot of that happening. I can't find it. The point is, just go look at my channel. I've done tons of stuff on the grid, including very recently, and for whatever reason, I can't find it. Energy lockdowns and Iran war. Okay, there's one example. Because actually, that's something that I should mention here. There are pushes for actual energy lockdowns to stop people from driving, to stop people from flying, to stop people from buying a certain amount of food. This is stuff that's actually been pushed on countries worldwide right now, something that is being mandated in some places.
Yeah.
Again, I don't have the article up on my screen today for you, but that is a real thing, and I've been doing videos on it for quite some time. But this is something that major think tanks and people that work directly with governments worldwide, including Western governments, including the United States, including Europe, have said they plan to do very soon, which actually interlocks with the United Nations Pact for the Future, which I'll get into later as well. Another example of how they're already forcing these mandates on people. But this energy shock is reaching that tipping point. And again, yeah, will it destroy the global economy? Absolutely, it'll destroy the dollar, which was always part of the agenda. They again propped up China to eventually replace it with that new system under the guise of competing against the dollar, which is not exactly what is happening here. that is a very, very much exaggerated move. This idea that they're fighting, it's all fake, it's all veneer, it's all just for the public to fawn over, while in reality it was always planned, and they are pulling the rug out for this new Eastern-based digital system. So again, this by the way, the DHL Group CEO says the 10 to 12 million barrels of crude oil per day. It'll come to that tipping point. Solutions are needed, and political momentum is building up to resolve the situation in the Strait of Hormuz. Yeah, everything that's happening in the Strait of Hormuz is perfectly in line with the agenda. Again, we have this. Europe has 5 months a supply of jet fuel. Dutch government says. The Dutch government said it is explicitly considering a further deterioration of the situation and is preparing for it. How much can you actually prepare for this kind of stuff? Again, this is all by design. They are purposely destroying that system. And by the way, the Dutch government, which used to be headed up by Mark Rutte, who's now in NATO, is one of the most obvious examples worldwide of a government that is pushing the World Economic Forum agenda forward and the net zero agenda to a great degree, as I talked about earlier with the, of course, restriction on farmers, but that's just the beginning of it. Doug Casey, someone we've had on our show several times before, a really interesting guy, is saying on the Strait of Hormuz, the dollar is collapsing, the coming energy crisis will be really bad, and he has 60-something years of knowledge on this situation and wants people to prepare. Again, he's one of the inspirations behind many freedom fighters out there. Also one of the tallest people I've ever met. But anyway, just another example of more people trying to warn us, more people that are extremely intelligent trying to warn us. Speaking of warning, I have this article that I have in my bookmarks. Thank goodness my computer saved my bookmarks. My laptop crashed and I had to get a new one.
Here we go.
I'm going to be away still for a few days, by the way, because the cord that I got with my new laptop is faulty, and they say it could take a week or two to get a new one. So I'm using computer stores just for a couple days, and then I have to give it back later today. It's all a whole thing. I won't get into it, but it's very difficult for me to make videos right now. Everything's going wrong. Anyway, I had this in my bookmarks, which luckily got saved, and it's from National News back from April 26th of 2023, so almost exactly 3 years ago. New York City to unleash food police to limit residents' consumption in the name of climate justice. Now, that was under Eric Adams. Of course, we have Mamdani now, but this is something I warned about. This is part of the idea of they want to restrict people based on what they eat and control people through this ration-based system, and this is a real thing. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson wants to open city-owned grocery stores. Now, this is from Breitbart from 14 September of 2023. So I've been following this story for quite some time, my friends, and here we have Mamdani's municipal grocery store plan, which is real, which is planning to come in by 2029 and is costing hundreds of millions of dollars to do. Or actually by opening late 2027, not 2029. There's another store coming in 2029. But the point is, hundreds of millions of dollars to build a store, which is absurd. Why not just feed people, give people food? But of course, that's not the point. They want to get people ready for this system, just like they have with the Amazon stores, which aren't governmental, but have the same idea, where people scan their hand, scan their phone to even enter the store. And there's no employees. And it's all AI-based. Again, they are priming everyone for this new system.
And like everything else, so that system is going to be worldwide. They don't let a good crisis go to waste. Trump shares letter calling India and China hellholes. See how this is all scripted? Because that's all Donald Trump is as an actor at the end of the day. He plays the part of the asshole, and he definitely is an asshole. No doubt about it. You're getting tired of this guy. It's just like, man, does this guy ever shut up? And, you just can't get around him. He's everywhere, right? And people worship him as he were God. So he, in his ego, declares himself to be like the Most High. The U.S. President reposted a podcaster's message describing immigrants from the two countries as gangsters with laptops. So of course here we go with this illegal shit. We can't have illegals or immigrants. Just even though the only one that's illegal is Esau, because he's the one that's stolen the land. But nonetheless, though, I digress. Has declared India and China's hellholes. Trump reposted a letter from former radio host Michael Savage podcast, Savage Nation on Truth Social on Wednesday. Post was criticism of the U.S. birthright citizenship laws, which refer to India, China, and other countries as hellholes. Because of course they have the Social Security system over here, where they can identify everybody and get them on the base. U.S. President recently courted controversy after posting and later deleting AI-generated image of himself depicting himself as JC on Truth Social, triggering a worldwide backlash, which he did on purpose. Showing and posturing himself as the savior, because people build him up to be a savior. Who's gonna save the world tonight? What these fucking songs that these Edomites sing, right? Because they have no savior, so they have to make one up. Why not just make one up as Donald Trump, right? Earlier this month, he threatened to destroy Iranian civilization overnight in response to the blockade of the Strait, but later backed down. Also, there's this rumor going around. I don't have any articles on it, but I'll try to find something in a little while. But there's this rumor going around that one of the generals over there in D.C. had to suspend the codes from Trump because they said that he was a madman and might have actually pushed the button to actually nuke Iran. Yeah, that's, that in other words, they had to suspend him from the football that controls the launch codes, that he was actually thinking about using it. So, I don't know if that story's true or not, but it's certainly worth investigating, because this is a high-ranking official that, took the codes away from Donald Trump. This is interesting because that's almost a mutiny, isn't it? Russia to stop Kazakhstan oil flows to Germany via Odysee pipeline. After several weeks of the main oil artery into Europe being halted, perhaps as Ukraine awaited the outcome of the Hungary election and the green lighting of Europe's $90 billion euro loan to Kiev, Zelensky stated the Odysee oil pipeline will be ready to ship Russian oil again. There's just one problem. Russia said it would halt the Kazakhstan crude oil shipments to Germany through the major Odysee pipeline next month after reporting technical issues. So this is going to create an even bigger crisis because, of course, the Nord Stream pipelines were blown up, and this is the only other way, and they're saying that, well, it's not fully functional. So this is another recipe for disaster, which is what they want, right? Brussels scrambles as fuel shortages hit Europe. Airlines cut flights and fuel prices surge as the EU falls back on subsidies and long-term plans without reserving course on its misguided energy policies. Crisis is hitting businesses and citizens. Airlines are already cutting flights, fuel costs are rising sharply, and supplies are tightening. The problem is clear. Europe depends heavily on imported fuel that passes through the Strait, one of the world's most unstable shipping routes. Why? Because they supported the U.S. in their attacks against Iran. They know who's complicit and who isn't, but that affects the EU and NATO. About 40% of the EU's jet fuel and diesel moves through the Strait. Analysts warn stocks could run as low as 6 weeks. The pressure is already showing. Germany's flagship carrier, Lithuania Group, plans to cut 20%, 20,000 short-haul flights by October and shut its regional armed city line to conserve fuel. The group says kerosene prices have doubled since the start of the Iran conflict. So, it's just really bad all over. which is what they wanted to accelerate this. And then you got this going on, facial recognition programs, the system in place to where eventually everybody's going to be scanning their hand or forehead. Well, you already know that it's called facial recognition for now, but it's going to be a lot more. They're going to look for that chip. They're going to have the chip. Okay, they'll have all the facial recognition, but it's like if you ain't got the chip, you ain't getting through. They'll know who you are if you ain't even got a chip with this facial recognition. You see what I mean? But they'll be scanning for chip. UK High Court backs facial recognition rollout. Yesterday evening, the UK's High Court ruled in favor of the Metropolitan Police and legal challenge pertaining to the use of live facial recognition technology across London's transport network. And airports are the easiest place to do that because, all eyes see you anyways because you're constantly looking at flights and times. Specifically, their lawyers argued that the current powers claimed by pigs governing the use of LFR would breach Articles 8, 10, and 11 of the European Convention on Human Rights. But the High Court judge says, nah, dismiss the challenge in favor of the fucking pigs. Because like everything else, this is the system that they want. And so, like everything else, of course, the U.S. is trying to bully Iraq into the war with Iran, and Iraq has stepped back and said, no, we're not getting involved with that. Hey, they had an 8-year war history of a war with Iran, and they don't want to have any more casualties. Yeah, they still couldn't win, even with all the weapons of mass destruction that were sent by the U.S. and the Israeli state to arm Saddam to go against Iran. They still suffered heavy casualties because Iran could not break. They don't want another war with Iran. Quite simple. And plus, what did that benefit them? Nada. Then they went in, they destroyed Iraq under the pretenses of he had weapons of mass destruction, which most of those were used in that war. So they don't want anything to do with this, but the U.S. is trying to bully them anyways. So here it is.
A retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar says Washington is trying to hold Iraq accountable for the very consequences that the U.S. itself caused in the country.
This is another feeble attempt at bullying and intimidating, perhaps trying to draw Iraq more directly into this conflict. You remember when the United States was fighting ISIS, those Iranian paramilitary organizations fought in that
fight. The U.S. was helping ISIS.
And that we equipped and that we armed in the fight against ISIS that grew stronger as we made the Iraqi government weaker by our presence and our control. So now, the situation where the Iranian or Iranian-backed militias or pro-Iranian militias in Iraq are still present. And now the United States is going to bully and hold back funds, hold back money to Iraq based on something that the United States itself created. And I think this is just another attempt to show that the United States is trying to manipulate and bully nations in the region, not just Iraq, but we've seen this with other nations as well, into becoming more directly involved in this war, which the other nations in the GCC region do not, because Iran is their neighbor. It serves them no interest to get into a prolonged, deadly war with Iran. And I think this is another clear attempt of the United States trying to force allies or partners in the region, especially Iraq, because of its proximity, into more direct involvement in this war.
So, like everything else, though, trying to force them to go to war with Iran again when the casualties were so high on Iraq's side. In fact, before they, a few months before they killed the Ayatollah, I remember in December broadcasts on Press TV when the Ayatollah had said, Saddam Hussein was a tragedy, because he was a U.S. puppet, and look at what happened to him. He served the U.S., in their war against Iran for all that time just to be taken out by the U.S., totally used and abused and just totally discarded and just totally destroyed by the very people that he thought was giving him power. And it was a tragedy, as the Ayatollah had put it, before they assassinated him at the end of February. Violations, threats, blockade, main obstacle to genuine talks. And this is coming from President Pezeshkian. The Islamic Republic of Iran has irrevocably welcomed dialogue and agreement, but Washington's constant breach of commitments, naval blockade, and military threats remain the main obstacles to genuine negotiations. So he knows that, there is no negotiations here when you're doing all this. The U.S. and Israeli state launched their illegal, unprovoked war against Iran on the 28th of February, assassinated the leader of the Islamic Revolution, Ayatollah Khomeini, and striking military installations and civilian infrastructure, including schools, which Donald Trump bragged about and said it was fun. The U.S. has also threatened further military action, while its officials have issued contradictory statements about their commitment to diplomacy. Yeah, they pretend to be all about diplomacy and democracy, but they're really about enslavement and taking countries down, to do their biddings. Trump threatens to bomb Iran as Strait of Hormuz tensions escalate. Trump warns may strike Iran as ties Hormuz across the U.S. blockade with uncertainty over the ceasefire. Like everything else, so this is written a few days ago, but, he's just continuing his utter threats, and this is what Iran's talking about. Donald Trump has threatened to resume military strikes against Iran if long-term agreement is not reached by next week, even as he pointed to unspecified good news. So, like everything else, though, I may not extend the ceasefire, but the blockade is going to remain. But maybe I won't extend it, so you'll have a blockade, and unfortunately we'll have to start dropping bombs again. So he's getting ready for a ground operation, no doubt about that. And that's why now, instead of it resuming a couple days ago, till Sunday, we're going to give it a little more time. Iran's IRGC seizes 2 ships in the Strait. Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps on Wednesday seized 2 ships in the Strait, a move that comes after the U.S. military seized an Iranian cargo ship in the Gulf of Oman and a tanker carrying Iranian oil to the Indian Ocean. The IRGC says the ships were seized for committing violations in the Strait. With the intelligent dominance of the forces, the vessels were identified and stopped in order to uphold the rights of the noble Iranian nation in the Strait, the IRGC Navy says. The seizures come after President Trump declared he was extending the ceasefire with Iran, but he would maintain the blockade against Iranian ports. Iranian officials say it's a ceasefire violation since a blockade is an act of war. Iran has maintained that it will not hold further peace talks with the U.S. until the blockade is lifted. So there you go. All being done to prepare for their ground operation, which it's going to go very badly. Israeli media speculates the Iran ceasefire to expire by Sunday, so that's the new deadline. Will we say another deadline? I don't know. You can just say that they're stalling. They're stalling because they're planning something. Israeli army continues to pummel southern Lebanon despite 10-day truce deal. Well, there we go. Destroying over 420 housing units in less than a week. It ain't a fucking ceasefire at all. None of it is. U.S. Navy Secretary steps down. Pentagon announces, another one. So, getting rid of these people that disagree with Trump. CPJ, outraged over Israeli targeting of Lebanese journalists. Israeli soldiers looting and civilian property in southern Lebanon. Well, this is nothing new, if you definitely know the history of Amalek. Tehran protests to UN over U.S. misuse of Arab state soil for anti-Iran attacks. And this is just talking about everything that's transpired within the last couple months. Iranian ambassador and permanent representative to the United Nations has strongly protested to the world body over the U.S. misuse of airspace and territory of 5 Persian Gulf Arab countries for illegal strikes on the Islamic Republic during the imposed war. He stressed that countries bear international responsibility not to allow others to use their territory for committing acts of aggression and armed attacks against the third state. Iran, he added, calls on governments of Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, and Saudi Arabia to honor the principles of good neighborliness and prevent the continued exploitation of their territory for attacks against the Islamic Republic. But, like everything else, they're going to suck Trump's cock, because he really needs his cock sucked, and these people fuck each other in the ass anyways, because they love to fuck children up the ass as well. These are pedophiles in power, and they have their bed with Amalek, because Trump is Amalek. They're all in bed with Amalek. The unprovoked U.S.-Israeli aggression against Iran began on the 28th of February, with airstrikes that assassinated senior Iranian officials and commanders, as well as the Ayatollah. Persian Gulf countries allowed the aggressor regimes to use their soil to and airspace to launch anti-Iran attacks. So, they already know about these violations, and like everything else, so, I don't even think that, this thing, you can forget about the Sunday deadline, but nonetheless, though, that's what they claim, right? He doesn't stay at that home, right? He enlarges his desire, and like everything else, so pretty soon, though, all these countries are going to rise up against him. So we're watching the tensions, right? But, we know that pretty much this whole valley is about to be confounded, right? Everybody's going to have their place there. Joel chapter 3, verse 2, and it reads, I will gather all the Gentile nations that were hostile to my people, which they all played a part. Psalms 83, especially, you can read about that. All, including Syria, which is our own, had their place in that. And that's why that whole region is on fire, because the Most High is judging it. And bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat, which is right there. The Most High has judged. So this is a pre-judgment. In other words, it's already determined. This is the determination of the Most High Yahweh. He already determined this, so that's what's happening. They're moving into his determination. They have a date, and they're coming down. And there I will deal with them and enter into judgment with them there. For their treatment of my people, my inheritance Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations, and because they have enriched to my land and divided it up. And they all had their place in that. They're all in bed with Amalek. They're all pedophiles with Amalek, who Iran refers to as these traitors. But even Iran, even though it wasn't called that at the time, even they had their part. All of them took part in this. They cast lots for my people and traded a boy for a prostitute and have sold a girl for a wine that they might drink. Again, you read Psalm 83 and it goes into that. Moreover, what are you to do with me, O Tyre and Sidon? These are all these places in Lebanon that are being pounded by the Israelis. And all the small regions of Philistia, will you pay me back for something I have supposedly done to you? If you do pay me back, I will swiftly and speedily return your deed of retaliation on your own head. And that's just it. This determination and retaliation from the Most High. That's who's gathering all these nations here. There ain't a thing that happens on here. Nobody schemes a plan that the Most High didn't give to begin with, because they all have their own determination. The Most High has the ultimate power, and you can't get around that. That there ain't nothing that happens here that the Most High didn't ordain himself. And I have sold the children of Judah and the children of Jerusalem to the Greeks so that you may send them far away from their territory. And that's what they did. Psalm 83. Behold, I am going to stir them up from the place where you have sold them, and return them to their land, and I shall return your action of retaliation on your own head. This is talking about when he will bring us back. We become the new rulers, and, actually the original rulers, right? Because like everything else, so in our regeneration, Yahweh Shai leading, and King of David being back, we're going to be in power again. This is what's going to take place. And I will sell your sons and daughters into the hands of the children of Judah, and they will sell them to the Sabians, to a distant nations, for the Most High has spoken. So, before this happens, he's going to ultimately bring them to the destruction in this. Proclaim this among the pagan nations, prepare war, stir up the mighty men, let all the men of war come up, let them come near. And that's just it. They were watching it. Hurry and come, all you surrounding nations, and gather yourselves there. Bring down, O Lord, your mighty ones, your warriors. Let the nations be stirred to action and come out to the valley of Jehoshaphat, for there I will sit to judge and punish all the surrounding nations. This is the final destination. This is the Most High's determination. And you're seeing it in real time, so hopefully this has been edifying. And they will, before it goes nuclear, they will have the whole system in place. You're seeing the beginning of that system, digital IDs, facial recognition, and eventually to having everybody, with a microscopic tag inside of them to track their every move, aka the MOTB will be placed in them, and then this judgment will come out, and for anybody who takes it, you already know what that judgment is. being caught in the nuclear destruction of World War III. And you can see all these things in the plan and the determination of the Most High. So hopefully this has been edifying. Got one more here before I close this out. Then I'll say Bracha the Yahweh, Bracha the Yahweh Shai, Ba'Hashem Rakakadash, Wa Abba Baba. Brakatum Jehovah Elect. So like everything else, so the invasion, it's beginning. So we can get into this video. Shalom.
Good morning, everyone. You are watching Full Spectrum Survival. I have a breaking news alert for you. We have now seen reports that a massive amount of U.S. cargo planes loaded with their munitions have landed at Israel's airport. This is according to Israeli Channel 12 News. Now, you have to remember this is happening at the same time the USS George H.W. Bush Carrier Strike Group is expected to reach the Middle East. This is the exact day of U.S. President Donald Trump's newest deadline against the nation of Iran. Now, the country of Iran has said that they are willing to fight to the death to make sure that what they call the great American enemy does not take control of the Middle East or control of the Strait of Hormuz. But this isn't just about Iran. China just delivered a final warning to the USA, and they did this through the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs. They have said that, quote, China has taken note of the illegal interception by the United States of a civilian cargo ship traveling from China to the country of Iran. According to their warning, they say, let it be absolutely clear. The United States can do many things on the world stage, but attacking, detaining, or harassing ships from China, or even returning to China, will not be taken well by the Chinese government or its people. Now, according to military strategists, these actions will be regarded as a direct attack against Chinese sovereignty, trade, and the national interests of that country. In this final warning to the USA, they say that China will take all necessary measures to safeguard its own legitimate rights and interests. And according to their warning, the United States will bear the full responsibility for any military consequences arising from what they call further provocation. Now, Kevin Hassett just said that before this war with Iran took place, the United States intelligence operation received warnings that Iran already possesses nuclear weapons. Not just has the ability
so here we go, the rhetoric to get everybody to join a war.
Of these nuclear weapons, and the only reason that the Iranian administration has not used them is because we have not attacked to a degree that would be seen by their partners, which are China and Russia, as a complete deletion of the Iranian state or a true threat to their territorial integrity. The Hungarian Prime Minister just revealed a leaked audio recording. In this leaked recording, they say that a big war is coming. His quote is directly, "It's going to happen anyway. A big, expletive, war is coming." Now, new satellite imagery shows a massive number of IRGC speedboats as they careened away from the Strait of Hormuz in the last 48 hours. This is apparently a new mining operation taking place. According to other reports, inside of the USA, a man armed with a rifle and claiming to have explosives barricaded himself into a store inside of Memphis, Tennessee.
There we go, false flags. You should know it. Anyway, shalom.